The first sign something was wrong came from a LinkedIn notification. My wife Rachel had updated her profile at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Strange timing, but I wouldn't have thought twice about it if I hadn't noticed she'd also changed her profile picture to one I'd never seen before. She looked different, styled hair, perfect makeup, wearing a sleek blazer I didn't recognize. I'm not the jealous type, and after 8 years of marriage, I trusted Rachel completely. But something about that photo nagged at me. When did she take it? Why hadn't I seen it before? I casually mentioned it over breakfast. "Oh, that old thing?" She laughed, not meeting my eyes. "Had it taken at a work conference last month. Thought it was time for something more professional." I nodded, but my stomach tightened. Rachel hadn't attended any conferences recently. I would have known, since we always coordinated schedules for our 6-year-old daughter Madison's childcare. When I pressed her about which conference, she got defensive and changed the subject. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about other small changes I'd noticed lately. The new gym membership she barely used. The girls' nights that ran suspiciously late. The way she guarded her phone like it contained state secrets. Looking back, the signs were obvious, but I'd been too trusting to see them. I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone while she was in the shower. What I found made my blood run cold. Hundreds of messages with someone saved as Mike Work. Except Mike wasn't just a colleague. The messages made that crystal clear. "Miss you already," he'd written just hours ago. "Last night was incredible." My hands shook as I scrolled through months of messages. Pictures, hotel receipts, detailed plans for their meetups, carefully orchestrated around my business trips and Madison's school schedule. They'd been sleeping together for at least 6 months, right under my nose. The worst part? Mike wasn't some random colleague. He was my friend Jason's brother, someone who'd been to our house for dinner parties, who'd watched football games on our couch. Each message revealed new layers of betrayal, showing me just how thoroughly I'd been played. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself. Then I started digging deeper. Rachel had created a secret email account, used for booking hotels and coordinating their schedule. She'd even opened a separate credit card I knew nothing about. The level of deception was staggering. My mind raced with questions. How many times had she lied to my face? How many family events had she missed for her affair? Had she been thinking of him during our anniversary dinner last month, when she'd seemed so distant and checked her phone constantly? I felt sick remembering how she'd gaslit me whenever I'd expressed concern. "You're being paranoid," she'd say. "Don't you trust me?" She'd even used our daughter as cover, claiming she was late because of Madison's dance class when she was really meeting him. The shower stopped running. I put her phone back exactly where I'd found it and pretended to be asleep. My mind was already formulating a plan. Rachel had no idea what was coming. I spent the next day in a fog, going through the motions at work while my world crumbled. Rachel texted me sweet nothings throughout the day. "Hope you're having a good day, babe," and "Can't wait to see you tonight." Each message felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I knew she'd been sexting Mike just minutes before messaging me. The hardest part was maintaining normalcy for Madison's sake. That evening, I sat through dinner, helping her with homework while Rachel chatted about her busy day at the office. I watched her lie effortlessly, weaving stories about meetings and deadlines when I knew she'd spent her lunch break in a hotel with Mike. After Madison went to bed, Rachel curled up next to me on the couch, acting like the loving wife she pretended to be. The familiar scent of her perfume now made me nauseous. I remembered buying it for her birthday last year, not knowing she'd wear it for another man. "Everything okay?" she asked, noticing my tension. "You seem distant." The irony of her question almost made me laugh. Instead, I suggested we plan a weekend getaway, just the two of us. Her eyes lit up, or was it panic? "That sounds wonderful," she said, already reaching for her phone. I knew she was texting Mike, probably making excuses for why she'd have to cancel their plans. I kept digging over the next few days, uncovering more lies. Rachel hadn't just betrayed our marriage, she'd manipulated our entire social circle. She'd convinced her best friend Emma to cover for her, creating elaborate fake girls' nights as alibis. Emma, who'd been Madison's godmother, had helped Rachel destroy our family. The rabbit hole went deeper. Rachel had been planning to leave me for months. I found searches for divorce lawyers and apartments in Mike's neighborhood. She'd been siphoning money from our joint account into her secret credit card, building a nest egg for her eventual escape, all while playing the role of devoted wife and mother. The final straw came when I discovered she'd taken Madison to meet Mike several times, introducing him as Mommy's special friend from work. She'd used our daughter as a pawn in her sick game, making her complicit in the lies. The thought of them playing happy family behind my back made something snap inside me. I reached out to Jason, dreading the conversation about his brother's role in destroying my marriage. To my surprise, Jason already suspected something. He'd noticed Mike's strange behavior and expensive new habits. "He's been acting weird for months," Jason said. "Buying designer clothes, going to fancy restaurants. He's a middle school teacher. Where's all this money coming from?" That's when another piece clicked. The suspicious transfers from our joint account hadn't just been funding Rachel's escape. She'd been bankrolling Mike's lifestyle too. My wife wasn't just a cheater. She was a thief who'd been stealing from our daughter's future to impress her boy toy. I consulted a lawyer friend privately, making sure to keep everything off Rachel's radar. He confirmed what I already knew. I had enough evidence to destroy her in divorce court. But that wasn't enough. Rachel and Mike hadn't just had an affair. They conspired to dismantle my life piece by piece. They deserved more than just legal consequences. I started putting my plan into motion, carefully documenting everything while maintaining a perfect facade at home. Rachel had no idea that her carefully constructed house of cards was about to come crashing down. She thought she was the master manipulator, but she'd severely underestimated me. My first move was contacting Rachel's company's HR department. I had evidence of her using company time and resources for the affair, including emails sent from her work account to coordinate their meetups. The cherry on top: Mike had recently applied for a teaching position at the private school where Rachel served on the board of directors. Their pillow talk about securing him a job was all documented in their messages. The next step was harder. I had to tell my parents and Rachel's parents what was happening. I couldn't let Rachel spin the narrative her way when everything blew up. My mom broke down crying when I showed her the evidence. Rachel's father, a retired judge who'd always treated me like a son, sat in stunned silence before saying, "We didn't raise her to be this person." Rachel's mother had a different reaction. "I knew something was off," she said. "She's been different lately, distant, critical of you for no reason." She revealed that Rachel had been bad-mouthing me to her family for months, laying groundwork to justify her eventual leaving. She'd painted me as controlling and neglectful, the complete opposite of reality. The pieces kept falling into place. Rachel's recent insistence on sending Madison to a different school suddenly made sense. It was closer to Mike's apartment. Her constant complaints about our house being too small weren't about needing more space. She'd been setting up an excuse to move to Mike's neighborhood. I hired a private investigator to document their meetups, not just for divorce proceedings but to show the school board exactly who they were considering hiring. The PI uncovered something unexpected: Mike was seeing 2 other women besides Rachel. My wife wasn't his soulmate. She was just another mark in his game. The PI's photos showed Rachel leaving work early to meet Mike at various hotels, while timesheet records proved she was billing those hours to her company. She'd even expensed some of their business lunches. The documentation was damning, but I needed more. I set up cameras in our house after finding suspicious charges for an interior designer. Sure enough, while I was supposedly at work, Rachel brought the designer through our home, planning renovations I knew nothing about. She'd been secretly meeting contractors too, using our joint savings to get quotes on projects she planned to complete after I was out of the picture. The most disturbing discovery came from Madison's iPad. Rachel had been using it to message Mike, probably thinking I'd never checked there. I found pictures of them together at an amusement park, on a day Rachel claimed she was taking Madison to visit her sick grandmother. There were dozens of photos of them playing happy family, with Mike acting like a replacement father to my daughter. The messages on the iPad revealed their full plan. Rachel was going to ask for a divorce during our upcoming beach vacation, A trip I was still supposedly helping her plan. She and Mike had already put an offer on a house together. She was going to demand full custody of Madison, using the fake narrative she'd created about me being unstable and controlling. Their messages discussed how they'd handle the transition, with Mike bragging about how he'd be a better father figure than me. "Once he's out of the picture," Mike wrote, "we can finally be a real family." Rachel's response made me physically ill. "Madison already loves you more than him anyway." I thought I'd seen the depths of their betrayal, but I was wrong. Rachel hadn't just cheated. She'd been systematically working to erase me from my own family's life. She'd been grooming our daughter to accept Mike as her new father while simultaneously building a case to limit my custody rights. The final piece of evidence came from Jason. He'd found receipts in Mike's trash for an engagement ring. The timestamp showed he'd bought it the day after Rachel and I celebrated our 8th wedding anniversary. They weren't just planning a divorce. They were plotting a complete replacement of my existence. Everything was ready. I'd spent 2 weeks gathering evidence, consulting lawyers, and setting up the dominoes. The hard part was maintaining normalcy around Rachel, especially after discovering the ring. Every time she touched me, every kiss goodbye, every "I love you," felt like acid on my skin. But I kept my composure, knowing the end was near. The morning everything changed started normally enough. Rachel kissed me goodbye, said she had an important client meeting, and left for work. I waited 30 minutes, then executed my plan. First, I forwarded all the evidence to her company's board of directors and HR department. Then I sent a detailed package to the private school's hiring committee, documenting Mike's relationship with a board member and their misuse of school resources. I'd arranged for Madison to spend the day with my parents, protecting her from what was coming. Then I called Rachel's office and asked to speak with her about an urgent family matter. Her assistant hesitated. "Mrs. Anderson is in a client meeting." I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. We both knew Rachel was lying. "That's interesting," I said calmly, "because I'm standing in the lobby of the Hotel Madison right now, looking at her car in the parking lot. Would you like me to go up to room 412 and get her myself?" The assistant went quiet, then transferred me to HR. While Rachel was enjoying her morning tryst, I had movers emptying our house of everything valuable or meaningful. Family photos, important documents, Madison's treasured possessions, and anything that couldn't be easily replaced. The movers had strict instructions about what to take and what to leave. I wanted Rachel to come home to a house that looked normal at first glance, but felt emptier with each room she entered. I'd already transferred my portion of our assets to new accounts she couldn't access. The joint accounts were drained fair compensation for the money she'd stolen. Her secret credit card was maxed out and reported as fraudulent. Every financial safety net she'd built for herself was systematically dismantled. The PI was documenting everything, including Mike leaving the hotel around 11 a.m. Rachel emerged 20 minutes later, smoothing her hair and checking her phone. She had dozens of missed calls by then, from her assistant, HR, the school board, and her parents. I timed everything perfectly so the revelations would hit simultaneously. I watched from my car as she stood in the hotel parking lot, her world imploding via text messages and voicemails. Her carefully crafted lies were unraveling in real time. The school board was rescinding Mike's job offer. Her company was suspending her pending an investigation into misuse of company resources. The board of directors was calling an emergency meeting to discuss her position. But I wasn't done. Remember Emma, her friend who'd covered for her all these months? I'd sent evidence of her role in the affair to Emma's husband. He deserved to know the kind of person he was married to. Within hours, the entire circle of friends who'd helped hide Rachel's betrayal were facing their own reckonings. Rachel tried calling me repeatedly as she drove to the office, probably hoping to get ahead of the story. I let each call go to voicemail, imagining her panic growing with each unanswered ring. Her text messages became increasingly desperate. "We need to talk. Please let me explain. It's not what you think." The last message made me laugh out loud. "How could you do this to our family?" The irony was staggering. She'd spent months systematically destroying our family while planning her exit, and now she was playing the victim. Classic Rachel, always twisting reality to make herself the wronged party. I stayed in my car outside her office building, watching through binoculars as she rushed inside. The security footage I'd received later showed everything. Her being escorted to HR, the color draining from her face as they presented the evidence, her mascara-stained cheeks as she was walked out of the building. Her company badge was confiscated. 8 years of career advancement gone in an instant. Mike's downfall happened simultaneously. The school board didn't just reject his application. They contacted his current school with evidence of his behavior. His teaching career imploded spectacularly. Jason later told me Mike had a complete meltdown when he realized Rachel had been using their joint credit card to fund their lifestyle. He thought she was independently wealthy, not stealing from her family. Rachel arrived home to find the house eerily different. Everything looked normal at first glance, but key pieces were missing. Family photos replaced with generic art. Madison's favorite stuffed animals gone from her bed. The expensive watches I'd bought Rachel over the years vanished from her jewelry box. She wandered from room to room, reality sinking in with each discovery. I'd left one thing for her to find, a USB drive on our bedroom dresser. It contained everything. Photos, messages, hotel receipts, bank statements. Everything she'd tried to hide, everything she'd lied about, laid bare in meticulous detail. Next to it was Madison's iPad, open to their amusement park photos. Her call came at 9:47 p.m. I answered on speaker while my lawyer listened in. "How dare you?" she screamed. "How dare you blow up our lives like this?" The rage in her voice was almost comical, as if I was the one who'd orchestrated this destruction, as if she hadn't spent months planning to do the same to me. "Madison loves Mike," she shouted. "We were going to be happy. You've ruined everything." I let her rant for exactly 1 minute before speaking. "Check your email," I said quietly, then hung up. The email contained custody papers and divorce filings, already processed thanks to my lawyer's connections. The terms were non-negotiable. She'd lost any chance of joint custody after using Madison in her affair. The financial settlement reflected every penny she'd stolen, every dollar she'd spent on her affair. Her parents had already signed affidavits supporting my custody claim, devastated by how she'd manipulated our daughter. Rachel's world collapsed in exactly 6 hours. No job, no boyfriend, no savings, no family home, no friends. They'd all abandoned her once their own partners discovered their roles in her deception. Even her parents sided with me, disgusted by what their daughter had become. Mike tried damage control, claiming Rachel had manipulated him. He begged his brother to help salvage his career, but Jason had already provided a statement to the school board about his brother's pattern of pursuing married women. Turned out Rachel wasn't his first affair with a board member, just the one that finally caught up with him. That night, after everything, I sat in Madison's new room in our new house, watching her sleep peacefully, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny that Rachel thought she'd hidden away. In the morning, I'd have to start explaining to my 6-year-old why mommy wasn't coming home. But for now, I just sat there, knowing I'd protected my daughter from a woman who'd been willing to sacrifice her childhood for an affair. The last message I received from Rachel was simple. "I never meant for any of this to happen." I didn't bother responding. She'd lost the right to explanations or closure. Instead, I forwarded the message to her parents and blocked her number. Let her try explaining to them what exactly she meant to happen when she orchestrated the systematic destruction of her family. As I write this, Rachel's living in a studio apartment, working as a waitress after being blacklisted in her industry. Mike's teaching English in a small town 3 states away. His career in prestigious private schools thoroughly destroyed. Their dream home sits unsold, the offer voided when their finances collapsed. And me? I'm sitting in the backyard of our new home, watching Madison play with her cousins during a family barbecue. Jason's here. Turns out betrayal can bring people closer. Rachel's parents stop by often, grateful I haven't kept Madison from them despite their daughter's actions. Life isn't perfect, but at least it's honest now. The security cameras just caught Rachel driving past our house again. 3rd time this week. But she knows she can't stop. The restraining order makes sure of that. All she can do is watch from a distance as the life she threw away continues without her. Thank you for listening the story to the end. Write your thoughts about it in the comments and do not forget to subscribe. See you in the next videos.